I'm someone who I was like, I'm not good with words. Like English, that type of thing, I struggled in school. I had a tutor in grad school, not ashamed to admit it. Science and math are my leeway, where it's like, it's the fine line of I've always been that person, especially part of the queer community, to say, what is their intent? That I know I'm going to mess things up, and I even say preferred pronouns, right? But it is like, it's like, no, it is me and who I am versus like preferred name, because you might not have legally changed the name. So if you were looking up something for some reason, right?
All right, good morning. Our guest today, meet her, a trailblazing physical therapist and health coach with a passion for creating inclusive wellness spaces. Not just a healthcare professional, also a classical guitarist, a drag king. I had to Google it. I still don't really know. I don't understand, but that's the best part if she's going to explain it to me. And a business owner on a mission to heal physical and societal wounds alike. Michelle Stauffer, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. This is exciting.
Is it really? So can I be honest with you? I get a little, I don't know if the word's nervous. It's definitely nerves before I start talking with someone, because it's like dancing with a new partner. That's probably a good analogy. It's like, I'm going to have a conversation with Michelle. We cross paths on Twitter, which I actually find value in, because I block a bunch of people. I just think I don't need to talk to them. And then I bump into people that I'm like, oh, I don't understand you yet, but you tell me how you look at the world. So I get a little bit of nerves before we hit record, but probably for different reasons, because I took one of those personality tests, and my number one thing came back as woo. Are you familiar with the term woo? I thought I was, but
not in that sense.
When you try to like woo someone, like, you're trying to win over someone and make them like you. But I found out that it's an acronym for winning others over. And it sort of comes from a psychological need of like needing to be liked. So because that's my number one characteristic, it was called the Strengths Finders assessment. Because woo is my number one thing, I am so concerned with meeting Michelle or anybody I'm talking to, and then being like, I need to make sure you're comfortable and everything here is good and that you have a good time and those things. And that's hard to do quickly. You know what I mean? Like, especially in this environment, like, you're a real person. We were talking before we hit record, before the audience started to hear this. But this is a fake environment, right? Like, we set up a time to have a conversation, but it's an interview, but I really want to make it a conversation. So I get nerves until about the 3-minute mark, and we're at 2 minutes and 19 seconds. So we're getting close.
So you just got to keep rambling and we'll get there. I mean, I say I wouldn't get nervous because it is just a conversation, and I can talk to a brick wall. So as long as now someone's talking back to me, I'm like, this is great. There's low expectations. I'm not going to get a grade on this, and I can tangent left and right. So are you on board for that? Let's go.
I don't know that until we start talking. And that's usually where the 3-minute mark, I was like, oh, okay, we're good. Like, we're pretty good. All right. So I mentioned some things in the intro, and I've started to do this segment called 3 Questions, and I've started mixing it up. So I figured I used to do it in the middle of the show, but now it's like, they're icebreaker questions. Why would you have icebreakers in the middle of the show, Jimmy? That doesn't make any sense. Let's do icebreakers now. So we're going to do 3 questions, if that's okay.
Okay.
Is that good? All right. 3 questions brought to you by APTA Physical Therapy. Leaders in clinical research. Find out more about joining their team at ATIPT.com. First question. You're not only a health professional, but also a classical guitarist and a drag king. Again, I mentioned at the top of the show, I needed to understand what that was. How do these 2 diverse aspects of your identity like sort of inform your approach to physical therapy, health coaching, healthcare? Like, I always find it fascinating when people bring it's never really an accident. These things that we do, when you look at them from the macro, they sort of bring things to the table. So help me understand what drag king means, because I Googled it, but I don't really get it. And how do you what do you bring from those things into what you do professionally?
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely tied together in the sense of me and my identity, because I'm a very creative individual. So music is naturally very creative in its space and sphere. And then drag king, you're essentially a performer. Like, I always joke to people that being a drag king, I get to live the fantasy dream of a kid of being a country music artist, the Luke Combs of the world kind of thing, because I do a country persona. But drag king is just the same as you hear about drag queens, which have a lot more status, more so in the common realm of things, but there's
Right.
kings. So it's basically people who kind of consider themselves female. It's all about switching gender and presentation.
Right.
So that's where the king comes in. And it's
Yeah.
just it's still a lot more underground, but it's been around arguably just as long as the queens have. But because of RuPaul's Drag Race and such, the
Right.
queens have really come to the forefront.
Yeah.
Does
I
that
mean,
help you understand it a little bit?
it does, and I did Google it because I wanted to make sure I was, sort of at least understood how to fit it into a question. But then I was like, in the day and age of I have access to information all over the place, and we're being bombarded with messages, I'd never seen those two words together ever.
Yeah, it makes me sad that like more people don't know about it because it's so much fun to do, and it helped me form my identity when I found it in college. Joining Prism is like the LGBT plus group that I feel like every college campus, even my grad school, had, and
Right.
they are the ones who put on drag shows at my college level, and then the like the liberal studies courses, all the teachers would provide extra credit if you would go to these shows. So it was massive. Like your local small theater that an artist has to sell out, like that was sold out in my town. Over 100 people in the audience that you're performing in front of. And then as a bonus, I got paid for it too. So I'd
And
walk out of there with some good cash to then go spend at the bar as a 21-year-old college kid.
the way to do it. It was that was smart.
Yeah.
So
Smart business from an early age.
it sounds like creativity and identity.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's where it kind of builds and it helps you be more comfortable with yourself, even though you're not yourself. Like I always felt like I couldn't walk past a mirror at first because I'd see my brother because we look a lot alike, and then I'm dressed as a man, and I'd be like, oh my god, is that my brother? No, it's me. But it helps you just kind of identify and see things in a different light, and then people compliment you on different things, so it's this weird boost of like you're not yourself, but you're still yourself in a different sense. And people can see that and respect that and affirm you in what you're doing. Like,
right.
I don't know.
Is
And
it,
then go ahead.
I was gonna say, how does it feel when people ask you like why you do it? Like, does that bother you? Is that good that they're showing interest?
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird, I guess everybody has their own take of why they do it too. Like I was
I'm
so scared the very first time I did it. And then I was like, wait a second, this is really freeing. And I love to make people happy and enjoy their time. And then I'm essentially just playing guitar in front of people, which being that classical guitarist, like that's always been a thing I've done. And I don't have to sing because I cannot sing for the life of me. I'm just lip singing. So it's like, I do it because I mean you have everybody jumping and you see so much joy
Yeah.
in people, and why would you not want to see that in people?
Yeah. Yeah. I can push play like no one can. That's all I did in radio was I pushed play, but I couldn't play a lick. And you do not want to hear me sing. I can talk, but I can't sing. All right. Second question on three questions. Uh, I wanted you. This was my way of getting you to be able to talk about your role in APTA, PT Proud, the special interest group, and APTA Colorado, their DEI committee. So, considering your roles in those two organizations, were there moments that you look back on that is like maybe in your eyes significantly advanced inclusivity within healthcare spaces? Because those are two different areas in the profession where those things cross. Hopefully.
Yeah, like have I seen progression in my time? Is that what you're
Yeah,
asking?
yeah. Because I think, well, have you seen progression? But was there a moment or that maybe you said, "Oh, okay, yeah, it's moving"? Because diversity, equity, and inclusion was the buzz phrase.
Hmm.
No one talked about that 7 years ago. No one talked about it 5 years ago. We talked about it 3 years ago a lot, and then, like
Hmm.
most things, news cycles, it sort of like went out. Right? I mean, we talk about stuff a lot, and then we sort of get tired of it because that's how brains work, and we're on to the next thing. But the goal would be to keep things progressing. So I just want to know, like, with your, well, first of all, I wanted to, as many people as possible to understand what special interest groups are. I don't even care what they are
Hmm.
because they're always free. So if you belong to a section or an academy in APTA, join all the SIGs. Just taste all of them.
Hmm.
And then, oh, okay, this one does more, then maybe back out of this one because your time is not unlimited. So are there any moments from your work with either of those organizations, APTA Colorado DEI or PT Proud, that particularly made you say, yeah, the needle's moving, or this was okay, good, we're trending, we're moving in a positive direction, we're still having these conversations. Here's a question for you. Do you want to boost your clinic revenue by $290 per patient per quarter? Of course you do. That's rhetorical. Physiotech's remote therapeutic monitoring can help you do that, enhance patient outcomes, ease provider workload, and turbocharge your earnings. Kickstart with RTM at physiotech.ca. That's physiotech.ca. And the thing you interact with the most at your clinic, if you're a therapist, like it or not, is your EMR. MW Therapy's all-in-one outpatient PT EMR gives you seamless integration of patient portals, marketing automations, and billing, all at one unbelievable value. Switching over is a breeze too. Kick the tires, take a test drive at mwtherapy.com. And where is your PT career going? It's not rhetorical, it's literal. Embark on extraordinary patient care adventures with Jackson Therapy Partners. Visit them at jacksontherapy.com. This is perfect for physical therapists eager to make their mark, to do what you want to do, where you want to do it. Discover where your career can take you at jacksontherapy.com.
Yeah, I mean, I would say yes, because you just think of how many organizations, sometimes I can't speak for the private practices because they're, if you will, on an island by themselves, but those larger businesses, you have more DEI annual training related things that wasn't there before. So there's some of those different things. And sometimes it's hard because I'm so in it that I'm seeing things all the time, but like someone who's not working in it, are they just like, oh, hey, I noticed that the diaphragm on the intake forms is like unisex. It's not specific to a certain sex at all. Like those are small things that change over time that you can see of, like I think the skeleton behind me doesn't have anything, but there is a male, this is reverse. Like there's a male body there who's really fit, right? Like
Right.
everything's in comparison to that of like if you didn't necessarily need that full body, it's not doing any benefit to that poster. So it's
There.
like small changes like that where like maybe that is just eliminated now when this poster is being produced. Like, but it's hard because I'm so in it of like I'm just seeing stuff happen, but is Joe Blow out there in the world noticing small changes of, oh, hey, there's that it now, or there's an equality sign on the window of a business that wasn't there before. So it's tricky on my end because I'm like, yeah, for sure, but are you noticing it? Who's not working in it? Have you seen a
Right.
change? Because that's
That's
how
probably
we really know that we are getting there.
that's probably a better question, which is you're doing the work, so you're interacting more often than I am, but I'm where the result is because I'm not actively doing that.
Yeah. Like, is our work showing to you yet, or is it
The
still
splash,
just within us?
the splash you guys are making, am I seeing the ripples far away from where that splash is actually taking place? Yeah.
Exactly.
I hope so. I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't know. I hope so, but maybe I'm not trained enough to look at it because I wouldn't have spotted that on the poster behind you. So I don't know is an honest answer. Which
Yeah, and
means
that's where my acuity to it is so specific that
right.
it's hard. And what you're getting out of what you're helping out with APTA Colorado is just building more awareness to things because so many people don't know about these things. So they don't mean some of people don't mean to be rude or ignorant, things like that. It's they thought they were doing good, and lo and behold, there's all these other progressions. So the more workers at it, the better it is.
Yeah. Okay. Third question on three questions. Your work involves creating more inclusive spaces for everybody. Help me understand or share an unexpected or creative solution you've implemented at Coast to Coast Wellness, where you are, that made a big impact. What's a small change that you made that really made an impact that people noticed?
I think like the biggest thing, which not every business can do, is my business is intentionally set up with not a brick and mortar because so many people in the LGBTQ space have traumas related to healthcare buildings that just simply going to a place that is a healthcare facility starts bringing up traumas. So I'm fully removed where I'm going to their space that they feel the most comfortable. And it's open to them because some people in their homes aren't that comfortable because of other people, neighbors, things like that. So it like that's like that foundational piece of like what brings you the most comfort so then you can really truly start on your healing journey.
Yeah.
And that looks like a lot of different things, but that's kind of like a foundation for then like brick and mortars to build off of how do we make the most people entering our doors comfortable so they can truly start healing.
Yeah, that's got to be the first step, right? That's got to be the first step, because if they're not comfortable, they're not sharing information. They're not gonna be them. If they're not themselves, then who are you seeing?
Yeah. And they're not choosing you, and potentially they're not going anywhere because they don't feel any space gives them comfort. And that's unfortunate.
Yeah. Um, if someone does have a brick and mortar facility, share how decisions can help what you were just talking about. How can they help or harm inclusivity, and what specific elements someone might be able to add to improve it? What are some things that we don't even know we're doing unintentionally that could be harming that?
Yeah. I think like the first thing is like your location and seeing like a lot of businesses, you're looking at the cost to rent that space and such. You're not necessarily looking at the accessibility to get there and what's it look like for someone with a wheelchair to enter your space and things like that, especially for, um, if we try to think inclusivity of there is a ton of Special Olympic athletes and those Paralympic, all those different adaptive sports. So you can have an athlete who doesn't look like your standard able bodied athlete, and they should still be able to access your athletic focused facility. It's not just able bodied people that should be accessing your sports facility. So it's some of those things of just like getting to your front door. Is it a long distance away? And then once they enter, is the space small, crammed? Do you have different seating surfaces of heights of chairs with arms, without arms? Because if you've got, Jason Kelsey just retired, he's a big boy. He's not going to fit in that standard little chair, right?
Right.
So do you have those variable options for them so that way when they walk in that door, they're instantly comfortable because they can see, oh, cool, I can sit in that chair. Even for like back pain, heck, not even thinking in the sense of LGBT related. Maybe someone can't sit really low, so they need a taller chair because of what they're feeling. Do
Right.
you have those different options for them?
What's the best way to figure out what's there that shouldn't be, or not there that should be? Are there ways to do it?
I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong way, right? The right way, I guess, as I counter what I just said, would be did you think about it and put in effort,
Yeah.
right? Because at the end of the day, your seating area might only fit 4 chairs. So do you at least provide different options within that versus all the same? Like I know aesthetics or something, but at the same time, providing those different options, like and making a point to think about it and see what you can do for your business.
All right, so let's get to an even more sensitive topic, talking about aesthetics or just things that have to be or should be in your clinic. Navigating the sensitive topic of bathrooms. How do you approach, or how do
Mhm.
you suggest people approach creating unisex bathrooms, or bathrooms that are accessible or comfortable for everybody? And what accessories or things are a must have that, again, maybe you don't know what's there that shouldn't, or not there that should be?
Yeah. I think for most, I mean, I've, as many physical therapists have, you had your own injuries and went to physical therapy. I don't think I've ever been in a clinic where it's you enter the door and there's multiple stalls. It's usually like a single
Right.
stall. You lock the door right behind you. So when you think of that, why does there need to be male and female? Just keep them both, bathroom one, bathroom two. And then you can specify out front this is the one that has the changing table in case there's parents who have a child with them that need that. Like you might not necessarily need that in both rooms. Um, but then you think of like feminine products, which, don't necessarily love the name feminine because someone who's transitioning, if there's a lapse in their testosterone dose for whatever reason, which happens often, things like that, they might still menstruate in things where if there's male bathroom specific, a lot of male bathrooms then don't have feminine. I keep using quotes because I hate like I said, it's the names of things at this current time,
Right.
but they don't have the feminine products in them. So then you have this male presenting, they identify as male, they go in, but they need some products to help with that issue. Now that you have to then go into the female bathroom, like it creates this issue. So
Right.
it's like if both stalls basically are completely equal, they have all the same things, that's where then there is no question of oh shoot, this is actually still the male bathroom or this is the female. Because even they're doing a lot of gender neutral bathrooms in public spaces. And sometimes that's great, but then like I've, in full transparency and vulnerability, I think these are things that are topics you talk about of when I've been menstruating, I've walked into one not knowing that like outside of this event, it was the male bathroom. So then there was no trash cans inside the stall, this and that. So then it was this more like, oh gosh, I gotta like do this whole
Right.
gamut thing and leave the stall. And it's like that would have been something that prior to the event, if they just put something in there, so then it truly was, hey, no matter who's using this, everything you need is there, like in a standard female bathroom.
It
So
sounds
that's
like
like that.
it sounds like
Uh-huh.
paying attention, and if you don't know, asking questions.
Yeah, yeah. And
But
that's
that's
like, and sometimes the beauty of PT Proud and um, the Physical Therapy Association and the DEI committees in the states and everything like that. There's resources and organizations where it's like it's taking that step as a business owner or whatever type of clinic to say, hey, we want to make sure this is there. Let's reach out because I don't really know what I need or don't need or how I should do it, and ask someone who's knowledgeable in it, and they can just send, hey, these are good things to have, or do this or don't do this. And then it's like, okay, cool. I've done that and I've provided that to my customers and patients.
yeah. I guess so. I said a second ago, it's a lot like paying attention. If you don't know, asking, but then also that third thing, which would be creating a way to for people to give you feedback, and then actually analyzing and putting the feedback into place. But this is the same
Yeah,
for
yeah.
it's the same for lots of things.
Yeah, I was going to say at the end of the day, it always comes down to someone caring and like taking the time to do it and acknowledge it because I've seen it that so many people are kind of like, eh, why do I need to? Why do I need to? And it's such a sometimes it's the invisible thing that you don't realize someone is being affected by. And if you have so many people coming in and out of the doors, you might not realize that like that one person didn't come back because of your bathroom situation and how many other people and what that did to them of like we're not trying to create harm to anybody. I know every person is that's their intent with everything, but it happens and it's just small things that it just makes your business or practice or clinic that much better because they see that and they're going to make note of it.
Yeah, asking questions is a good thing to do, but sometimes how you ask a question. This is coming from a guy who interviews people a lot. How you ask a question is important as well. You mentioned intake forms a question a second ago. Intake forms are just a list of questions. Are there things
Mm-hmm.
that we can do better? Let's put it that way. Instead of saying, are there things that we do wrong? Are there things that we could do better? See, I'm framing it a little bit different. Are there things that we could do better as healthcare providers on our intake forms? Because a lot of times those are the first point of contact. It's a list of questions, right? I know I was just
Mm-hmm.
taking it, going through an intake form the other day, and I didn't know how to answer. I didn't really understand what the question was asking, so I left it blank. But then I knew that was going to bring up an awkward situation. So, how can we create intake forms, or what can we do better to make sure that they're clear and actually cover what we're actually asking for?
Yeah. I think, like, from my vantage point, sometimes the intake forms, we're trying to get too specific and do like a closed ended question versus leave it open ended, right? Like, that's the person's time to kind of jot down what they feel comfortable with. And then you, as like the physical therapist, should really be able to then hone in based off what they have, what you know, to then ask those appropriate questions, just like how you are in an interview is the same thing. So it's like, if you leave it more vague on the intake form, it's going to give them more realm to write and share versus, oh, whoa, wait, this is asking about this. Okay, wait, no, now they're not. And then kind of start to back off. But like a big one I tell people all the time is an easy thing you can do is like people put name and then like maybe nickname I've seen on intake forms. And it's like, just put preferred name
Yeah,
because a nickname is a preferred name. But then when you have people who have changed their names or have transitioned, their formal name they were born with is considered their dead name. They don't want to have to be writing that, anything like that. Like that's already kind of creating a trauma for them. They just want to write the name that aligns with them and who they are and put that. So by putting preferred name, you're getting everything you need. You know what their name is, you know what they want to be called, everything like that. And then you have the pronouns. So then, in reference, if you're a clinic that still uses aids or texts or things like that, when you're communicating, you can say, oh, they want da 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 da, in case you found out that they have they, them preferred pronouns, things of that nature. And that just instantly creates that comfort to build upon and move forward with. Um, and that's usually right at the top of the sheet, right? So if that's not there and that's just saying name or nickname, like those two lines in particular, like instantly closed off, right? Like you're like, oh, okay, this is triggering, that type of thing. Um,
I was
but then
told
you can go in, like I
I got
mentioned, the
feedback.
body shape before.
Right.
Go
Sorry, I
ahead.
think we got a little audio delay. I mean to step on your toes.
No, I was just saying then it's like the body shape, which that one is, I personally haven't been able to find, like, how can you find a body that's not just thin build and this and that? That, like, for me and my personal intake forms of my business, I don't even have the body on there because that's something I can ask via questions, like them putting X's or circles. Like, I feel like, I don't know how many times when I was working in a clinic, people would get everything all over and they'd be like, I didn't really know how to do what I'm displaying and feeling. And it's like, yeah, that's something better discussed in a conversation. So I just eliminated that altogether. So that way, those um, larger body sizes or anything, you could be a smaller body size and still have some dysmorphia and such. You're not triggered by that.
Yeah. I got some feedback on the form. I sort of have like a guest intake form, and that's just me just to get all the guest information, right? So simplifying, once we release the episode, I've got all Michelle's information, yada, yada, yada. And I want to understand what Michelle wants to talk about, right? So I use it sort of as a pre-guest form. And I got feedback because I went and inserted preferred pronouns as a blank on the form. And then I was told that by using the word preferred, I was told not to use the word preferred because what it was explained to me is like I'm asking them what their pronouns are, not what their preferred pronouns are. So now we get to like nitpicky stuff, but also that's where sort of the needle gets moved is in the nitpicky stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm someone who I was like, I'm not good with words. Like, English, that type of thing, I struggled in school. I had a tutor in grad school, not ashamed to admit it. Science and math are my leeway, where it's like, it's the fine line of I've always been that person, especially part of the queer community, to say, what is their intent? That I know I'm going to mess things up. And I even say preferred pronouns, right? But it's like, no, it is me and who I am versus like preferred name because you might not have legally changed the name. So if you were looking up something for some reason, right? My
Right.
name actually might be different, but this is what I go by. Pronouns, it is like that's not on your birth certificate or something. If that is, that's news to me. But
So
uh,
large and small organizations. You mentioned some private practices might sort of like be on an island, right? But large
mhm.
organizations, small organizations in healthcare, in either of those settings, staff training plays a critical role in really being able to create and bring up some maybe awkward topics. I was taught in PT school, it's awkward if you as the provider make it awkward. If you've never actually asked a question out loud to a colleague or someone else, the first time you ask it, you should understand how you're going to ask it. Because if you trip over your words, that's making it's that's shining a light on how awkward it is for you. And now it's, of course, it's going to feel awkward for someone else. So staff training has got to be important in terms of fostering an inclusive environment. How do you structure, or how would you structure DEI training, and what topics would you find the most impactful for people that are providing care?
Ooh, that's such a good question. I think it's what like the PT Proud and the APTA at large is working to do of create webinars to help clinics that it's like you could just watch this and that can help with those trainings, because it's all dependent upon like the people within of everybody has their own knowledge starting place that maybe someone in your clinic is really knowledgeable because they're a part of the community, they've been doing work, da 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 da. Or maybe you have people who are all removed, they don't know any queer individuals, and their knowledge base is really low. So it's like, do you just need to use like the human resources campaign of like, what are pronouns? What's gender? What's sex? What's the different, like that kind of thing? And what's appropriate to ask, what's not. Like, I never asked someone, hey, Jimmy, why do you go by Jimmy and not James or Jim
Right.
or whatever, right? Because that could, who knows why? Like,
Right.
everyone's got their own story for it, and it doesn't change anything. You told me Jimmy. I'm going to call you Jimmy. That's fine, you know? And so
Does
it's,
does
go ahead.
PT Pro have resources like this? Because these are simple, these are basic. A lot of people will hear them and be like, "We need to have this discussion." But that's how English works. You learn letters, then words, then sentence, then structure, then paragraphs, and then you can go on and do everything. But when you skip over the basics, that's when things get tricky because you can fudge it for a while. You can avoid
Mhm.
things. I mean, I can't spell the word weather. I can spell the word weather with like rain and snow, but I can't spell like weather or not. I don't know why. I'm 44 years old. It's not going to happen. But I can go around it. So I can fudge things, and I do that. So we can
Mhm.
fudge things till you can't, right? We can hide from our lack of skill or knowledge in the basics for a little while, but then when you can't, it is glaringly obvious. So does PT Proud within APT have something like this? Or, I mean, looking right at the camera, this would be a great thing to create if we don't, because I think
Mhm.
there are people who don't when you don't know what you don't know, you try to hide from it, myself included. I'm speaking from experience. But if there was something simple that could make me feel adequate, I'd seek it
Mhm.
out if it was simple to understand.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is the stuff where it's like I haven't looked recently because it's already knowledge, not even thinking about it for me. I'm almost certain the APTA website broadly, like
Yes.
they have something on there, but it is a great thing that like, the PT Proud, we are working to try to build more of a social media stance, things like that. We're really getting the ball rolling. We're doing these webinars, starting to roll those out that getting those basic flyers, if you will, I'm going to use for lack of a better term, that like maybe it's just someone, so many people use social media that's on the X bio that you can click and you can go to and access quickly and easily without trying to go through APTA, stuff like that, because it is basic knowledge, but it's not basic knowledge to people who are never in it, as an acute care therapist and trained in sports. No.
Right. The term that I was taught, or the thing that once I started to wrap my head around, I was like, oh gosh, that's a thing. And the concept is, and let me know if you've ever heard of this concept. It's called the curse of knowledge.
Mm-mm.
So once you learn something and it is obvious to you, it is very, very difficult, not impossible, but it's very difficult for you to try to put yourself in the position of someone who does not understand that. So if you live and breathe, and this happens a lot with healthcare providers, especially PTs, is we start using anatomical terms or the Latin names of muscles because it's very difficult once we learn that to put ourselves in a position of, oh, the person I'm talking to does not have, never mind the specific knowledge, they don't have the general knowledge of what I do. So it's very difficult for people to put in, to remember what it was like to once not know this thing. And that's when we start communicating over the heads of people. And when I try to help people understand is, I'm not asking you to dumb it down. I'm asking you to begin communicating about a topic in a way that a beginner could understand, because that beginner likely can understand the advanced topic, but they haven't gotten there. You skipped to using words and you didn't teach them letters, but it's hard to remember what it was like to not know your ABCs now because you've been doing it for so long. And that goes to one of my favorite quotes is the biggest problem in communication is when we think it has occurred. So I said something, you nodded. I was like, well, then she understands everything of what I'm talking about. No, that's actually not, we know that that's not actually how it works. So not understanding these things is actually typically, when I work with people or organizations, that's the starting point. I'm like, I need you to, and maybe that's a theme for this episode, which is I need you to try to put yourself in the position of the person that is going to be receiving this, whether you're putting something in a bathroom or a waiting area. That is communicating. You are either showing that you understand or you are showing that you have not put thought into this.
Mhm.
And the effort is worth it.
Yeah, it makes me think of, gosh, I unfortunately haven't been to many CSMs, but there was one, and I believe it was when I was in Denver, that it was like a basic kind of DEI, like learn sex versus gender, this and
Hmm.
that. And they went around to like volunteers who were willing in the crowd, and it was like, give your introduction. And it's like my technical, if I was doing the whole shebang, would be, hi, I'm Dr. Michelle Stauffer, cis, lesbian, she, her. That tells you everything you need to know. And maybe for you, you just go, oh gosh, I don't know how I would do that whole part.
Right.
What is the purpose right there? And
Right.
that's a great thing of with, if you're walking in, like I guess you sit in a waiting room and then the physical therapist comes up to say, uh, Jimmy, and then you walk up and usually I shake hands back when I was working in a clinic and such that if that's what I did to my client, that instantly breaks down that wall and that person knows, oh, hey, that meant something to me. Or maybe it didn't mean anything to anybody. And they might ask a question, oh, what was that last part? I don't understand that. And I instantly know, okay, well, maybe you're not a part of the community, but now I can educate you at that basic level of, hey, this creates that familiarity and let you know, after that, I would say, but please just call me Michelle. Like I'm way too informal of a person but it lets people know it's your introduction. And it's only weird to people because not everybody's doing that. So they think it's a
Correct.
queer thing. It's that, but reality, it's just a greeting and letting you know, this is how you refer to me. Thank you and appreciate it.
Right. It's abnormal in the fact that it's just not done frequently. And the funny part is when
It,
things start to get done more frequently, um, they feel less weird. And I use the story of a saw blade. This is what I learned in radio. The
mm,
first time Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction album came out, it was like, oh my God, this is the craziest thing the world has ever heard, right? You couldn't play this on the radio. It was so outrageous. It's like a saw blade. But after it's done and after people hear it for a while, well, now they're playing Guns N' Roses in the waiting room on your dentist's office. You know what I mean? Like it was the
mm,
craziest thing people had ever heard. And then it just got a little bit less sharp, got a little more, it was done more and it became more familiar. So it's abnormal because of the frequency or because you've never heard it, not because of the outrageousness of
mhm.
whatever we're talking about. Because
Yeah,
I
and
think
the person, I mean, I was like, I love that you're talking about music. I was like, I could talk about music all day long too. That like, I mean, even Elvis with the gyrating and things like
right,
that, right? But
right,
he owned it and he stood true to it and wasn't going to let himself waver away from it because people were getting so mad at him for doing that and it was inappropriate, right? He was like, no, this is okay. I'm not revealing myself or anything that it is inappropriate, and he stood
right,
strong and true. And that's definitely the people out there doing the hard work on the streets of making movements and helping the queer community as a whole. You're standing strong and true, and you keep saying it and doing it so that it
right.
does become more commonplace.
But it's hard to be that person who is
Mhm.
getting cut with the saw blade when it is very, very, very sharp and new. And now you've got to be beaten up. Like you're essentially the first person doing it. And the world, as much as we say we like change as humans, we want change in familiar ways. And when you disrupt something, I don't like that. We want change, but when change shows up, I don't want it. I want it, but I don't want to do it. Someone else should do it first. Let them do it, and then I'll
Mhm.
come around in the middle, or I'll come in at the end. We want it, but we don't want it because it feels.
Mhm.
We ultimately want to feel comfortable, and I've just spent my whole life understanding it this way, and now you tell me it's different, and I've got to learn something again. Oh, I got to burn mental calories. That's horrible. But here's what I tell people: it's going to happen anyway. So you got two choices: wait around and be last, or do a little bit of work and just be and you can be towards the beginning. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. And it always helps to have community no matter what you're doing in life. But having someone you can rely on and ask of, I fully admit, like my mom was the one, she was asking questions, things like that. And sometimes her questions to someone she didn't know would be very offensive. And I'd say, hey, just so you know, if you
Yeah.
change it and ask it this way, like I know what you're doing. I'm not going to be upset because you're trying to
Right.
learn and understand. And making sure both people's walls are down and you're not defensive and seeing, hey, you're trying to learn right now and I want to help teach you because now you're on my team. That's another number. And we're going to get the ball rolling even better, that snowball effect.
But that interaction you just described is simple but not easy, which is like, oh, okay, I can see what you're doing here, but now I've got to educate in a way that doesn't make you feel like I'm penalizing you or making you feel bad. You were wrong. I'm going to educate you on how we can just change a little bit because I'm assuming your intent was to be right or get it right. I've got to do it in a way that's not like, like a good example of a bad way to do it was, well, actually, We love to do
Mm-hmm.
that. Well, actually, that's not the way to do it. And so there's a lot of steps that have to happen to get someone to feel vulnerable enough to the chance to be wrong in front of other people. That's insane. That's not a comfortable situation. So people avoid it. But if someone's bold enough to do it and they don't do it quite right, the person who's receiving it has to say, like, oh, I can see what you're trying to do here. Just so you know, like, what you did there could be construed. So you have to educate. And then that person also has to take that, again, uncomfortableness and go, okay, I need to learn from this. And so I don't do this again. And that's a lot of steps. So change is necessary. It's never easy, though.
Yeah. And I think thinking back to how we talked about clinics and what they can do for their staff and to help be more inclusive, part of that is doing basically motivational interviewing, like the foundation of health coaching, psychology, everything like
Right.
that is, and communication, because our career is built off of profession is built off of communication. And if you can't communicate, heck, you can just be talking about something, can you play pickleball later or not? Nothing related to sex, gender, anything like that. If you're not communicating well, if you don't have um, those good things, then that's going to play a role
Yeah.
of creating more of open-ended questions, affirmations. And I think, I mean, I got a little bit of that when I was in school, and I graduated. We're in 2024, 7 years ago. That I imagine
Yeah.
it's happening more now, potentially getting more. I don't actually know, but doing that is like almost like an additional baseline foundational piece to then build off of and then do the DEI of
Yeah.
nouns and
Well,
all that type of
there's a
jargon.
perfect example, which is people come into graduate school or PT school and we assume that they know how to communicate, even though we know what their prerequisites are. It's biology, it's anatomy, physiology, it's chemistry. So we assume that the communication has already been done. And yet there are no prerequisites for being able to communicate. And yet I sort of don't care how smart you are. If you can't communicate it, it is worthless. It is worth nothing if it stays in your head. That's sort of like what's prompted me to start this podcast is I would go to conferences and presentations and I'd watch as like someone who was brilliant. I'd meet them after they spoke and be like, oh my gosh, this person is personable and brilliant and yada, yada. And they just presented in front of 1,000 people, but they came off stiff because I think they assumed that they were supposed to, button their, shirt as tight as you can and tighten your tie and be a presenter. And I'm like, but that's not the way we receive information. We receive information best as humans in conversation, not presentation. So I was just like, oh my gosh, like there's so much of this information that would be great, but it's not going to spread. Well, first of all, back when I was in PT school, just in 2015, 2016, nobody was recording or sharing anything. You had to go places all the time. And I was like, this confuses me. But then also how to do it, it was assumed that people, because you could speak English fluently, you knew how to communicate. And those are two different things.
Yeah,
It's
1,000%. It's an ongoing thing too, right? Of like, I'm still like, I say words I struggle with and such, but it's like, wait, how do I, starting with the
how,
I feels and I this and practicing it more and more, how you say, if you've never asked it of, we should all be okay asking about sex because it's a natural part of the human life of, are you talking about it with your clients? Do you feel weird about it? Like, are you
right.
commending them and cheersing when they come in and say, hey, I had sex with my partner for the first time after all this back pain? Like, it's a thing that they might not be talking about. And if your intake form's too narrow, you're never going to get there and realize that's been an issue in their life, creating stress and all those other things.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Michelle, we've got something on the show called The Parting Shot. Are you ready for your parting shot?
Ooh, yeah.
All right, let's do it.
This is The Parting Shot.
Parting Shot brought to you by the Academy of Orthopedic Physical Therapy. Find them online at orthopt.org. Just launched a brand new YouTube channel. Station's not the right word. They did, and a podcast as well. I helped them do that. And now they're communicating at scale from clinician to clinician. And you can find it online at orthopt.org. Also, their industry-leading current concepts of orthopt. A great roadmap to go from wherever you are in your orthopedic journey to maybe taking that OCS exam. And you want to do that with confidence and feel competent. So find that again at orthopt.org. Michelle, your parting shot is your chance to wrap things up. Mic drop moment. What do you got for me?
Ooh, I would say put effort into the inclusive thoughts in your clinic. Be the person to start it and bring it to management if you aren't management or clinic owner, and know that it just takes small changes of what photos do you have on the wall of different body sizes, ethnicities, chairs, are your bathrooms equal? It takes small things. And if you don't know, reach out to the DEI community in your state. PT Proud, reach out to us. We're more than willing to share stuff. We're going to keep posting and sharing more to try to help. And if you guys let us know what you need, then we know what to share. So, but don't be afraid to do it. It's easy. It's just taking that first step.
Yeah. I don't want to change what you said. It's simple, not easy, right? It's simple,
yes.
not easy. So because I used to say, things are easy, and then I would explain for 20 minutes the easy thing, and I'm like, oh, it's actually not easy, but it is simple, which is asking questions, receiving feedback. That's simple. It's not easy because it's work. If it was easy, everybody would do it, but it is necessary.
Yes, 1,000%, and that's where not everybody's going to get their words right. So
Correct.
be okay with that and know that you're trying, and that's what matters, and that's what this whole thing has been about. Is you're trying, you're putting in that effort, and it will go a long way. Maybe not immediately, but down the line for someone or multiple people.
Yeah, it matters. Michelle, thanks so much for the time. I appreciate you coming by and making me feel good and not awkward about having a conversation.
Thank you so much. It was very welcoming.
All right, they say the best conversations happen at happy hour. Welcome to ours.